Just on the other side of the Lehigh River, on the banks, on December 20th, 1976, a 14-year-old boy found a suitcase. 20 feet away in a small wooded area, there were 2 other suitcases found. What he found would make national headlines. Come along and I'll tell you the story. I did want to go down to the banks on the other side where the boy found the suitcases, but it's very hard to access that side. This bridge is 300 feet high.
Even back in the 1970s, Interstate 80 was heavily traveled as this bridge was only 2 hours away from New York City. Police theorized that the suitcases were thrown from the westbound lanes in an attempt to throw them into the river, but one landed on the river bank and the other 2 landed in a wooded area 20 feet away. The impact of the drop broke 2 of the suitcases open, scattering a head, torso, and fetus. The 3rd suitcase remaining intact contained arms and legs. The gender of the victim was not immediately apparent, but was determined at autopsy to be a young white female and her unborn child, Beth Doe and Baby Doe.
Now, we are in a different county now. Before we were in Luzerne County, now we're in Carbon County. This is the Poorhouse Cemetery, where we will be looking for Beth and her baby's markers.
The dismemberment was not haphazard and was performed with a fine serrated tool. An investigator was quoted as saying of the killer, "He knew what he was doing." It is believed that she was murdered less than 24 hours before her discovery. Some parts had been wrapped in a bedspread and others had been covered with pages of the New York Sunday News dating September 26, 1976. The suitcases were blue, soft vinyl, and all the same size, 23 by 14 by 7.5 inches. The handles had been cut off and the zippers were painted a flat black. Initial autopsy revealed Beth was in her late teens, early 20s. In 1983, she was buried in Potter's Field, a place where people are buried when their families can't afford a funeral or when no family can be found. Flowers often adorn her grave. Long before officials had laid her to rest, her case had gone cold. In the 1970s, forensic science was still rather primitive. DNA wasn't part of the process, so little was done to preserve the tissue samples of 44 years ago. But police knew what her face looked like. They had dental records, fingerprints, samples of cloth, a newspaper, writing on her skin, and the suitcases.
It's so nice that somebody has flowers here.
On October 30th, 2007, a group of state police officers along with forensic scientists were able to develop a DNA profile for Beth, and they entered it into an international database. Families of missing people submit hair, nails, or other tissue samples to create their own DNA profiles and use the database to find matches. No matches were found for Beth Doe. If the DNA findings are correct, Beth Doe was born and spent her early childhood in Western or Central Europe. She moved to the United States as a child or teenager. She spent at least 5 to 10 years in the United States before her murder. She also most likely became pregnant in this country, and she probably lived in the Southeast, possibly somewhere in eastern Tennessee. The cold case of Beth Doe has been reviewed whenever new forensic testing becomes available. Unfortunately, there have been no new leads.
Well, thank you for coming with me. It's a sad story what happened to Beth and her baby. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that one day whoever did this to her is brought to justice. But, with each passing year, the chances of that get slimmer and slimmer. But there is always hope. Anyhow, thank you for coming. Click that notification bell. That would be awesome. Peace, baby. See you soon.